So let's start with motivation and generate the attitude of refuge if you like. So sit comfortably and reflect briefly on why you're here, why you're participating in this session, and try to connect that to your highest, most positive aspirations for yourself, and not only for yourself, but also connect that to your relationships with other sentient beings. Both those, immediate family and friends, and then those more distant people you don't directly know, and then even people you might have are prone to become angry with, dislike, and then all sentient beings, finally. Try to include them all in your motivation. And then if you like, you can generate the attitude of a refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, or whatever object of refuge you turn to. So bring that object to mind. Generate a sense of recognition of the dangers of suffering of samsara and their ability to protect oneself, and your faith in them to give you sound guidance. Okay, so now we can begin. Well, it looked like you could keep doing that for a long time, which is good. Sometimes when I do meditation sessions, I start with the motivation, and then like 20 minutes later, I'm still there, which is good. No, when we do a meditation session, each of the steps are very meaningful in themselves, and we could spend a lot of time on each of the steps. But which is good to do sometimes. But now we need to talk about death, so let's get on with it. So this is the fourth module, the way we're presenting the DB. Oh, you know what? I didn't even know. I'm a little not so prepared for the session this morning. I didn't open my PowerPoint slides. Anyway, I'll come back to it. So we're in the fourth module of this DB for Ocean of Compassion Center, and this is Death and Rebirth. And this is the second session. So just to review a little bit, last session, when I was just introducing kind of what death is and why meditate on it. And then so the first thing I did last session was locate death in terms of the Lamrim, the graduated stages of the path to enlightenment, which was presented in just the previous module. So you remember it's this first topic in the small scope, right? So there's two preparatory topics before the small scope, which is guru devotion, which we'll cover later, and the precious human rebirth, recognizing a precious human rebirth, which doesn't have a separate module, I think, in DB, but it comes up in different modules, like the last module. So then there's those two preparatory topics, guru devotion and precious human rebirth, and then there's the three scopes. Small scope, or path of beings, small scope, and then the middle scope, and then the great scope. So in the small scope, there's four main topics: impermanence and death, suffering of the lower realms, rebirth, and karma. Those four topics. So the first is impermanence and death. So remember, the small scope is mainly topics that are geared towards helping us. One way to say it is to turn away from the appearances of this life, which means to not be so obsessed with just things of this life, and to consider also the fact of our future lives, and to use this life well, not only to be a good person, but also to prepare for future lives, taking rebirth, and then and then working towards liberation from samsara and full enlightenment. So like Lama Tsongkhapa says in the three principal aspects of the path, there's one verse that kind of includes impermanence and death, and he says, let's see, leisures and endowments are difficult to find, and life is not long. Life does not last long. So leisures and endowments refers to the precious human rebirth. So it's difficult to find rebirth as a human being endowed with so much good fortune, such as we have now. It's difficult to find that kind of rebirth. And life doesn't last long, right? So that opportunity, all the opportunities we have as a human being, and the way we exist now, they're not going to last forever. It only lasts at the maximum of maybe 100 years, maybe a little bit more. And then within that, much of that time we're spent as an infant, young child. We can't make very conscientious, kind of informed decisions. And then much of that time we spent as a senile person, maybe, very elderly, weak, body ridden with pain, and maybe even losing our mental faculties. And then in between, we spend so much time sleeping, and then just looking after the mundane tasks of life, acting polite at dinner parties and going shopping and washing dishes and all those kinds of things. So then there's and then of course we have to earn a living, and then there's very little time left for doing the things that are most meaningful to us, right? So we have to recognize that, and we have to try to make time for those things every day and whenever we can, as much as we can, without procrastinating. So in that verse, Tsongkhapa says, leisures and endowments of precious human life is difficult to find, and life does not last long. Meditating on this with my mind, give up attachment to the appearances of this life, right? So that's the main point of meditating on impermanence and death, is to recognize that this life is just kind of an appearance that lasts for like 100 years, and then it's over. It's not certain how long this life will last, but what is certain is that a next life will come. So if we end up leaving this life without having thought about it, without having made any kind of preparations for that, that transition, that passage, that death is leaving this life and then going to a future life. If we haven't made any preparation for that, it can be terrifying and very disturbing and traumatic, and because we're totally uncertain, because we grasping at everything we're leaving behind in this life and totally uncertain about where we're going or whether we're prepared to go there in a future life. So so by recognizing our good fortune that we have now and that death is coming, then we turn away from the appearances of this life, which doesn't mean we just like drop everything and go to a cave by the sea and just live there and eat lichen and stuff like that. It means we don't give so much importance to the things of this life. Now, we don't put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. We don't invest all of our trust in just the happiness will come to me through relationships with friends and family, through having a nice house and clothes and money and good reputation and stuff. All those things are fine and we can enjoy, but it's not an end all be all. We're going to be separated from all those things eventually. So we have to find a source of happiness within our own mind, because it's our own mind that goes with us into next life. So that's kind of when he says, by reflecting on that leisures and that precious human life is hard to find, and life does not last long. By reflecting on this, turn away from the appearances of this life, it means to, instead of looking to external things of this life or as a source of happiness, look for a source of stable well-being and happiness within one's own mind, that will also provide one with well-being into future lives. And then I spoke about what death is last session. So remember, basically, to summarize, well, maybe I'll pull up the definition again. But first, just to summarize, it's basically, so birth is when our continuum of mind and continuum of us as a person comes from a previous life. So when we die from a previous life, and then a continuum of mind and us as a person, it through the force of karma, the karma we have with our parents of this life, then our continuum is conjoined with the sperm and ovum of our parents at the moment of conception. So that moment when the continuum from a previous life is conjoined with what are to become the aggregates of this life, like the body and mind that are propelled by karma for us to possess in this life. That moment of conception basically is birth. Yeah, and then from this very second moment after that, we age, we get older and older, and then at the end of our life, the moment when our continuum, our consciousness, and our continuum as a person, when it separates from this body and the kind of mentality, basically the aggregates, the body and mind that have been propelled by karma as this life, when our continuum is separated from those, that moment of separation is death. Right? So in the Buddhist view, it's not like death it's not an end by any means. It's just a transition, right? Just a separate. It's like think of a traveler checking in the different guest houses and then checking out, right? So each guest house or hotel is like one life, right? The time in between the hotels is like the bardo. Ordinarily when we're traveling, that's like the best time maybe, but here in the analogy, it's just kind of a very small time. So each hotel or guest house is like one body. So, and our as a person, we have a continuum going from guest house to guest house. So when we check in, it's a moment of birth, and then we stay there for a while. That's this life, and then when we check out, we leave, never to return. That's death. It's kind of like that. And then but it's not that we don't go somewhere else. The continuum of us as a person is still there. Our mental continuum doesn't end, as we discussed in the first module. It continues on and on and on without end. So the mental continuum continues, and then we're labeled on that continuum, right? So just like, yeah, and then so it goes to, and we still have karma. So that karma throws us into another guest house, right? Another rebirth. And then we stay there for a while, and then we die away from that one, like that, again and again and again. So yeah, so in Buddhism, there's not so much kind of, I guess for a lot of people, I think death maybe is kind of a traumatic or uncomfortable idea because it seems like an end of us as a person, like a complete end. It's the final end, right? But in Buddhism, there's no sense of that. It's just an end to us as we are in this life. It's not an end to us as a person, right? It's an end to us as a person as we identify ourselves now. We identify ourselves now with this body, with these eyes, these ears, this way of seeing things and hearing things, this way of thinking about things. And we have this whole story we create about ourselves. I'm from this family, I'm from this country, I have this education, and so on and so on. But so yeah, we separated from all that. So then you might wonder, well, what's left then as a person, right? Well, that's kind of that's another big job we have that we're reflecting on impermanence and death reminds us of. What are we essentially as a person? When we take away, our sex, our nationality, our religion, our physical appearance, we take away all those things. Like, what is the essential person that we are? That's what goes on to future life. Basically, it's our mind, right? And all the qualities of our mind, all the memories that we have, all the imprints of everything we've done, the kind of tendencies we have. Our beliefs, they don't transfer so much in a manifest form, but even skills, like you look at child prodigies, like Mozart is one of the most famous, or some children are amazingly good at math, or languages. So why does a child, how can such a young child have such amazing skills? Because of past lives, because of imprints. So those kind of some skills like that go to future lives. Also, habituation is one of the strongest things. Why is it, some children, when they see ants, they immediately just love to like crush them with their thumb and kill them and take real kind of joy in that. And some other children, when they see, ants or small insects, they feel so tenderhearted and kind towards them and don't want to disturb them in any way. Why? Again, habituation to, to violence, cruelty, habituation to kindness, generosity. Those kind of mental habituations also go with us to future lives. So reflecting on impermanence and death reminds us of that as well. Okay, so now I really am going to open up my PowerPoint slides. And so that's kind of a little review. So what we want to look at today is the benefits. Oh, sorry about that one. Can't do two things at once. Okay, and I go here to the bottom to reading. What's the view again? No.
The one that looks like a little book?
Yeah, okay. It says reading view. Doesn't make, okay, I guess that makes sense. Thank you. All right. So, full screen. Okay, I get you guys on that too. All right, so since I'm talking so much about PowerPoint slides, I should show them probably. So share screen. Okay, here we are. That's all. Yeah, that's all review. So here's, maybe. Remember, a person is a being imputed in dependence upon aggregates. 5 or some among those. I think I explained that before, so I won't spend time. So we're imputed on the aggregates. The reason, you might notice when I'm talking about like what death is, how the continuum of the person and the continuum of consciousness, it's being separated from the aggregates of this life. So the reason I keep talking about those two, continuum of a person and continuum of a consciousness, is because they're different. So this is something I don't want to talk a lot about now, but in there are different views about what a person is within the different philosophical schools, tenet systems of Buddhism. Right. So I'm trying to make it according to the highest. It's called the middle way consequentialist school, which you guys don't have to be concerned with now. But according to that school, the continuum of our mind, right, is not the person. According to some other schools, the continuum of our mind is the person that we are. But according to that school, which I'm trying to present according to, the continuum of consciousness is not the person. It goes from life to life. The continuum of our mental consciousness goes from life to life. But that continuum is not the person. It's the basis of imputation of the person. So the person is, as a person, we're labeled. Like at the time of death, we don't have a body, right? So then what is it that the being is imputed upon? What aggregate? It's the aggregate of that consciousness. So the person is something that is just merely imputed upon the mental consciousness, like as we die or in the bardo. Anyway, you don't have to be too concerned with that now, but if you're wondering why I'm kind of saying those funny things. Okay, then death is the separation of a person's continuum from the ripened aggregates belonging to a particular life. So that's just a much more technical way to say what I just said about what death is. Okay, so here we are, session 2. The advantages of thinking about and the disadvantages of not thinking about death, with a bonus topic, the 8 worldly concerns. So we have 3 headings to go through today. The 6 disadvantages of not thinking about death, the 8 worldly concerns, and and then the 6 advantages of thinking about death. Yeah. Okay. So basically, yeah. Okay. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. What are the 6? So here, the six disadvantages of not thinking about death. Maybe I need a little bit of a prelude. Is that, remember, the Lam Rim. I have to remember when we're going through the Lam Rim, it was originally taught for people who are Buddhist, right? So the Lam Rim is set out for people who, assuming they already have this kind of Buddhist worldview, beginning with that there are past and future lives, right? I think we spoke about that in the first module, in the module on the mind. But if it's still kind of a question, if you have questions about it, you're still kind of contemplating that, we can speak about it more in the question and answer time or in the discussion group. But so Lam Rim is set out for an audience, assuming they already believe that there are past and future lives, assuming that they believe it's possible, that karma explains why we experience happiness and suffering, assuming that it is possible to be free from samsara, and more or less assuming it's possible to achieve enlightenment. So that's a big set of assumptions, right? Very heavy set of assumptions. So like, how does it apply here? But those are all things in this kind of course, Introduction to Buddhism, we need to ask and question and challenge, think about all of those, I'm not taking for granted that you believe any of those things. But how does it apply here when we're thinking about the disadvantages of not thinking about death? Is because many of them, they're kind of assuming that you think, you should be practicing Dharma, that practicing Dharma is a good thing to do. So if you're not doing that, then that's a disadvantage. Whereas for many people, that might not be the case. They're like, well, yeah, I don't really need Dharma. But then you're probably not here in the course to some degree. I mean, you must have some interest to be here. So anyway, just keep that in mind. So 6 advantages of not thinking about death. The drawback that you will not remember Dharma. Right, so I have to think about, well, why is that a drawback that I won't remember Dharma? Well, I mean, one way to think about it is, well, practicing Dharma here means sort of, remember, doing things, using your life in a way, engaging in practices like prayers and meditation, purification, practicing generosity, practicing pure ethics, pure morality, doing all kinds of things that will create causes for you to have a good rebirth, right? By the way, of course, it means you're a very good person in this life. But in addition, they're all become causes for you to achieve a good rebirth, a precious human rebirth. Again, so remember, one way of defining Dharma is, or Dharma practices, are practices that contribute to your happiness in future lives as well as just this life, right? Versus worldly activities are things that are done with a motivation just to achieve happiness for myself or oneself in this life, right? So when thinking about ourselves alone and my happiness in just this life, and then whatever we do, it's a worldly activity. Whereas we can do the same activities, but with a different motivation, with the motivation that I'm doing this in order to, at the minimum, achieve, well-being for myself alone in future lives as well as just this life. Then it becomes a Dharma activity, right? So in one way, that seems a little shallow because, of course, it is much more profound, much more meaningful to include others in your motivation, even if it's just this life. So so that's where the other definition of Dharma, and I'm digressing a bit here. I know I probably shouldn't, but it's good to repeat. Another definition of Dharma helps us in that case. Well, what about really good people who don't believe in past and future lives? Can't you still be a really good person and have a very meaningful life and bring a lot of benefit in the world without believing in past and future lives? Yes, of course you can. To be a good person doesn't depend upon believing in past and future lives or rebirth, right? But then, well, then how can, such a person, do they practice Dharma? Yes, because another way of defining Dharma is anything that we do that goes against the 8 worldly concerns, is one way to say it, or against the afflictive emotions, beginning with selfishness, self-centered attachment, selfishness, self-centered attachment, anger, jealousy, arrogant pride. So anything we do that goes against those afflictive emotions is Dharma as well, regardless of whether it's motivated by a concern for happiness in future lives. Right? So when we do things, with a motivation to achieve well-being and happiness in just this life, but not only for myself alone, for others as well, for my family, my friends, and just the whole global village at large, then those things also go against afflictive emotions and thereby our Dharma. Okay, so back to the disadvantages of not thinking about death. So the drawback that you'll not remember Dharma. Yeah, so here, the idea is that if we don't think about the fact that this life doesn't last long, that we're going to die, then all of our attention we just give to things of this life. And if we're, have selfish tendencies, which many of us do oftentimes, then, especially when those selfish tendencies, our selfishness is at the fore, and we're just thinking about our own happiness in this life, then yeah, we can, that leads us easily into justifying treating other people the way we wouldn't want to be treated, lying a little bit, maybe stealing, all kinds of, basically mistreating other people in different ways, and not making any preparations for future lives. So if we don't remember death, yeah. Another thing is that just we easily, as I've already kind of alluded to or said more or less, we easily, look over the things that are really most meaningful to us, most important to us, and we get caught up in trivial concerns. Right. So if we think about our own death, really, and imagine ourselves, on our deathbed, we, get cancer, have a stroke. We can imagine, come down with coronavirus. I mean, lately, how many videos have we seen, of people who never thought they'd get coronavirus, and then they have it, and then they have all kinds of regrets, and are reminding those of us who haven't been vaccinated or who have didn't think we would get it, and acted carelessly, that it's a real thing. I mean, they're talking about coronavirus specifically, but in a way, it's like you could look more broadly, death is a real thing. So oftentimes we don't really think seriously about what that means. And we find, if we don't want to find ourselves in the position that when we're dying and we finally realize death is a real serious thing, it's coming, and there's a lot of things that we did that we regret, whether it be, having mistreated other people, or just not, things that we really wanted to do that we just didn't. Yeah. So, if we think about death now, if we don't remember death now, then we kind of, we easily not only not remember Dharma practice, but don't really remember like what are the things that are most meaningful to us about this life that we want to do with this life. And then not to mention, we don't remember about the importance of not harming others and benefiting others as much as we can, right? The essence of Dharma practice. We don't think about, making the most of this life. Okay. Then the second, the drawback, you will remember Dharma, but you will not practice it. So this, I think, is kind of even more for like a person who's like Buddhist. Remember, and this doesn't apply just to Buddhists. It applies kind of pan all religion. You can imagine the same for a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or whatever. Because many of us were born into like one family. That family practices this religion, so then we practice that religion too. And so, we think about, it's not that we don't remember, like I'm Christian or I'm Muslim or I'm I'm Hindu or I'm Buddhist, we remember and we have faith and we have respect, but we don't really practice. No, we kind of go through the motions. We say the prayers. We wear the nice clothes on the special days. We give gifts to people at Christmas and stuff. But we don't really think about the essence of what that tradition is about and what it means to become a better person, become a more spiritually mature, kind-hearted, patient person, in accordance with that practice. So there's the drawback that if we don't remember death, we'll remember Dharma kind of in a superficial way, but we don't really practice, right? And then there's the drawback that you'll practice, but not practice properly. So even we're a little bit more serious, like Dharma practitioner, we think, yes, I have certain teachings that I've taken, so I have to do these certain meditations every day. I have to say these prayers every day. I like to meditate, so I spend some time meditating every day. So we do practice, but we don't really practice properly. So what does that mean here? One, it can mean different things, right? So this is all the kind of stuff we meditate on. What does that mean? One thing it might mean is though, we can see like when we're meditating, how easily we're distracted to things about this life, thinking about nice places we want to go, people we want to meet, nice times we had in the past with other people. So even, we do practice, but, or how we want, we're meditating and we can't wait to tell other people about my experiences in meditation, or I go to a teaching with His Holiness and Dharmasala, but most of the time I'm thinking about what I'm going to tell my friends when I get back, or I'm putting posts on my Facebook page so like everybody knows that I'm having this amazing spiritual experience. So even spiritual experiences, they can become the fodder for materialistic, actions. Chogyam Trungpa, when he first came to the West, one of the first books he produced was this brilliant text called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, because he saw that that's something Westerners are really prone to. Not only Westerners, but very much, because we live in such a hyper consumeristic society that we're really prone to take anything that we do and make it something we can kind of sell, not necessarily for money, but maybe for reputation or for praise or for, for self-aggrandizement. I haven't used that word in a long time. But somehow putting ourselves up, right? So that's a real danger with spiritual practice. If you do it for any amount of time, you'll see our ego is so tricky. Our self-cherishing, self-grasping, our egoistic mind, it takes anything that we do and finds a way to make it reinforce our own ego and our own kind of arrogance and our own sort of selfish concern. So even, things that should be selfless, like practicing generosity, being kind to others, our ego kind of very sneakily takes those things and makes it like part of our just worldly concern. So if we think about impermanence and death, it helps cut through that, remembering that what does it matter if, we'll come to this, but what does it matter if other people praise me or not? I'm going to die and be totally separated from that reputation, all those people. What does it matter if I'm famous or not? I'm going to die and leave this life. I could die any day. And what will that matter then? Doesn't matter an iota, right? So thinking about death helps make our practice more pure, not mixed with worldly concern for reputation and fame and things of this life, right? So there's a drawback. So if we don't think about permanence of death, there's a drawback that we'll practice, but not practice purely. That's another translation of what that's the Tibetan term that's translated as properly there, can also be purely. Our practice won't be pure because it'll be mixed with the 8 worldly concerns, which we're just about to talk about. Okay, then 4, the drawback of not practicing seriously, or so seriously here is a translation of a word that can also means intensely, right? In Tibetan. So nentenje, that means like to put effort or with intensity. So if we don't think about impermanence and death, we might, sincerely do meditation, do different practices, try to reduce our anger, try to increase our patience, our kindness, increase our generosity, and so forth. But we do so. We might do Dharma practice. Yeah, so we remember Dharma. We do Dharma practice. We do it purely, not mixed with selfish concern, not mixed with worldly concerns. But we do so with a kind of laziness that thinks, well, even if I don't, if I don't sort of make much progress or be able to, if I can't put much time into it today, there's still tomorrow, and then there's next week, and there's also next month. I'll be alive for a long time. Like I can just keep practicing kind of slowly and steadily. And there's no hurry to kind of do a lot. If it's too uncomfortable or too kind of difficult, I can leave it for now and just leave it till later. So there's that kind of laziness. There's no intensity, thinking that I could die any day. This could be my last day here in this life on this earth. So if we really had that kind of recognition strongly, like, because it's a fact, that it's not sure we're going to be alive tomorrow, right? That's it's just a fact. When we look around, that's one of the main things we meditate on. But if we really had that kind of recognition, like this really could be my last day, in this life, our mindset would be completely different, right? There'd be so much more intensity to everything that we do, right? So while I think in a way it's not realistic to really live every day as if we're pretty certain we're going to die tomorrow, it just becomes too kind of bizarre. Like, but we definitely can bring a degree of intensity into our practice, recognizing that it really is possible I could die tomorrow. There's no certainty. So if that was the case, would I be sitting here like watching this Netflix series for 3 hours like today? Or would I instead maybe turn it off after an hour and spend 1 hour like doing some prayers, meditation and prayers before I go to bed? We modify things so that they're more meaningful than they would otherwise. Of course, that's not to say, I don't want to say like you shouldn't consider the radical possibilities. There is a prayer I put in the some additional materials in that outline Mary Ellen sent out earlier. I think I put it in before we sent it out, called The 10 Innermost Tools of the Kadambas. So there's a link to the actual prayer and then a commentary by Lama Zopa Rinpoche on it. And that is like the really radical version of what you would do if you think about death seriously. Like you would give up everything, go to a cave, and just be determined to sit there and meditate until you die and someone just finds your corpse. Like, so for most of it, that's not going to happen, but we can take some dose of that and apply it in the context of our lives with all the responsibilities that we have now. Okay, so the drawback that by not practicing seriously, I have to kind of speed up a little bit, I'm running out of time. Then the drawback of acting vulgarly. So this is a translation, acting vulgarly. Like, what does that mean? Basically, it means, the Tibetan is mirungwa. So what that really means is acting in a way that you yourself deem as unsuitable, or you yourself deem as not appropriate, not what am I looking for? Not acceptable, right? So we all do things that later we regret. We all kind of make excuses sometimes to do things, act in ways, treat people in ways that we know is really not right, but maybe, for now, I just do that, and then later I'll try to be better or something. So that's kind of what this is talking about. Basically, we'll use our life in ways that basically, when we're at the end and looking back, we're going to regret, right? And then it leads to the sixth one, the drawback of having to die with regrets, right? So these two kind of go together. If we don't think about death, think about what's really meaningful in life. The fact that this life's going to end. I think it applies, especially in relation to, as I see it, in relation to the way we interact, like with our parents, our children, our people really close to us. Yeah, none of us want to die with regrets in those really significant relationships. right? And that depends upon not acting in ways that are vulgar. I mean, vulgar, I don't know, it's kind of it's really strong. It's kind of a strange word, but the Tibetan is mirungwa. It means like unsuitable, inappropriate. Kind of a more, I like a better translation, I think. Yeah. So thinking about that, that really helps us to continually check our behavior. Am I acting now in the way that, is this the person I really want to be? Is this what I want to be known as? This is how I want to be remembered after I'm gone. If we think about those things again and again, it really helps us to check our own speech, actions of our body, and the kind of thoughts we have. Okay, so that's that one. Then, especially in relation to, I think it's, especially in relation to the third one, the drawback that you'll not practice properly because your practice will be mixed with worldly concerns is, oh yeah, sorry, there's a quote. Anyway, the 8 worldly concerns. So there's another quote. Oh, yeah. I'm coming to, okay, I'm jumping ahead in my mind. Okay, so let me just look through these quotes. Then we'll come to the 8 worldly concerns. Okay, so this is by Aryadeva from the 400 stanzas. What could be more dangerous? Okay, so this relates to the drawback that you will not remember the Dharma. What could be more dangerous than to sleep as though at ease? So just carry on, means sleep as though at ease, means just carry on with our kind of normal lives, and especially like the normal expectations that like society has for the way we should kind of use our life, especially the most mundane expectations like consumeristic, materialistic kind of, concerns. Just like, especially if you follow the advice of advertising, advertisers who want you just to buy different products for different sort of totally trivial reasons. So you can look beautiful and, be popular. So what could be more dangerous than to sleep as though at ease while subject to the Lord of death, right? So you don't see any advertising agency reminding you that death is coming. You need to buy this product before that happens. No, they don't use that because that's so uncomfortable. So, but that's the thing, and nobody's reminding us to think about death. Not many people. That's why we have Buddhism and other religious teachings. So what could be more dangerous than to sleep as though at ease while subject to the Lord of death, ruler of the 3 worlds, himself without a master? So this is saying we need to remember, like, death is definitely coming. It's completely foolish not to remember that, right? And it's a big danger. Okay. Then, so this is by Lama Atisha, as quoted in Liberation of Palm of Your Hands. So relating to the drawback that you will practice, but not practice properly. Oh yeah, so here's, ask me, what are the results of thinking only about this life with a selfish way? And I will tell you, they are merely the results of this life. So they're just, you can achieve things in this life. We can all see people who are totally self-centered, arrogant, and think about nothing except themselves and what they can achieve in this life. They can achieve a lot. They can amass a lot of power, a lot of influence, a lot of wealth. They can go a lot of places, buy a lot of things, earn a lot of respect from other people. Those are all the results of this life, right? But then he says, ask me what will happen in your next lives, and I will tell you, you will be reborn in hell as a hungry ghost or as an animal. Just because when we do things just totally self-centered for just pleasures of this life, it's negative karma, right? It's all negative karma we create. So that's what we become completely habituated to. And then when we die, that's what ripens. Negative karma ripens. What is a negative karma? What does it do? It throws us into rebirth as a hell, as a hungry ghost, or as an animal. Right? So that's a teaching that's very direct. Doesn't mince words at all. Ask me what are the results of thinking only about this life in a selfish way. Remember, I'm adding that kind of characterization. Because if you think only about this life in a totally altruistic way, it's completely different, right? You create just virtuous karma. So what are the results of thinking only about this life in a selfish way? I will tell you, they are merely the results of this life. So you achieve things in this life. And what will happen in your next lives? And I will tell you, you'll be reborn in hell as a hungry ghost or as an animal. And then the drawback of having to die with regrets. So this is Shantideva. I'll have to depart, leaving everything. So, yeah. But not knowing this, I committed various sins for the sake of friends and foes. So yeah, I think it's quite for the sake of attachment to friends, enmity towards foes, towards people we consider enemies. We with attachment, yeah, we do things to, I don't know, to please our friends, maybe that we wouldn't do. You think of teenagers, doing all kinds of stunts or whatever to impress their friends, whatever. Yeah, when I was a teenager, we used to sometimes go to, the friend says, oh, we should steal stuff, go steal stuff from the shop or from this, house or whatever. And they're so impressed, if you do that. So yeah, it's just stupid, right? So for the sake of friends and family, we can do non-virtuous things for the sake of, in order to take revenge, get back at enemies and stuff, do other things, commit various sins without thinking about death. So yeah, and then we have to depart, but we have to depart leaving all of that behind. All those become completely meaningless, the friends, enemies, but that whatever negative karma we created for the purpose of those, it goes with us. We have to experience. And then, okay, so here we come to the 8 worldly concerns. Yeah, so I'm quickly running out of time. I'll just give a brief kind of explanation of these and then the next thing, but we can come back during the question and answer period if you want, because it is a little, takes a little work to clarify what these mean. But the main thing is come back to selfishness. They're all motivated by selfishness. It helps to clarify it a lot. So the 8 worldly concerns are these: liking for gain and disliking loss. Right. So on the surface, it looks like, well, why? What's wrong with that? If I gain a little something, I win the lottery, why not? I get a raise, like, why not? Have a little success. Why not? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, actually. And disliking loss. Yeah, if we lose, lose our phone, lose our laptop, lose whatever, our car, lose our house, of course, that's tragic. That's something we dislike. It's something incapacitates us in many ways. There's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, again, like putting all of our eggs in one basket, expecting that just by always having gain and always avoiding loss, that will ultimately make us happy, in this life, not to mention like future lives at all, right? So recognizing that's not, it's not, because also we can't control so often when we have gain and when we have loss. It's out of our hands. So it's just a natural part of living in the world and life that we experience both. We have to learn to accept that fact and learn how to deal with both. And then so by having some kind of equanimity towards that, it makes us much more peaceful in this life and the next. It's not that we don't try to do anything, but we have some kind of equanimity towards it. Anyway, like I said, these require a bit of interpretation to come to some clarity about. So liking gain and disliking loss. Liking fame and disliking disgrace. So here again is totally out of our hand. And then, well, I'll just read through the first. Then third, liking praise and disliking deprecation or insult. And then liking pleasure and disliking pain. The last one I find the most difficult. But let's just stick with the second. So liking fame and disliking disgrace. So even if we're famous, like, what does it get us in the long term? We can look at so many people, so many famous people who, clearly thought. I mean, you can see this is like the template for the life of a singer, like a pop singer or an actor. Actress is like, you need fame in order to succeed in certain careers. You think that by becoming famous, then everything will be all right. And then you become really famous and you realize what a burden it is and how unfulfilling it is. And then, live a life consumed by depression and drug use, and it ends early. Like it's a common story we've all seen. So yeah. So craving for fame, liking fame, and then disliking. No matter what we do, there's some people going to criticize us. Some people are going to think we're a total fool. I can speak from experience as a monk. When I'm in the Buddhist circles, people are like, "Oh, Venerable, it's so wonderful. You've been ordained so long." But then you go to the mall, and people are like, "What? Why are you wearing those weird clothes?" Like, then talk to people. What do you do? I'm a monk. How do you make money? Well, I don't really. What? What are you crazy? Like, it's a disgrace, right? So whatever we do, it's going to be like that. Then that comes to the next one: praise and deprecation. Some people praise us. Okay, it's nice. It feels nice to be praised in that moment, but we see it doesn't last long. I mean, I'm sure you've all had the experience of, like, in the morning, someone praises you for something, you feel so great, and then the afternoon, evening, someone criticizes for something else, and you feel miserable, right? We could just go on this, if we're attached to praise, and then it's really averse to, deprecation. I put the deprecation here actually, but insult maybe is better, easier term. But if we're averse to that, then it's like we put ourselves on this emotional roller coaster where we get elated when someone praises us, and then we get totally downhearted when someone criticizes us. That's just causing ourselves tons of suffering to do that. And we can't control. And in the long term, like, what does it mean? What does it matter what other people think about us? If we don't feel good about ourselves, then none of that matters. So that's it's really important to get stability, kind of clarity in our own minds. Do we feel good about what we're doing, how we're being? Then whatever anybody else says, like, so what? And then, okay, then the fourth one here: liking pleasure and disliking pain. Well, so you have to ask, well, I thought the whole point of Buddhism is to avoid suffering and get happiness. So then what are they saying here? That it's a problem, it's just a worldly concern to like pleasure or happiness and dislike pain or suffering. Like, isn't that just natural? Well, in a way, yes. So see, we have to do some interpretation. What it means is, here, pleasure is especially talking about the pleasures of the six sense doors. Pleasures of things we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. So think sensory pleasures. And then think even more dramatically, hedonistic pleasures. So versus like sensory discomfort and pain, right? Oh, what is someone just said in a session the other day, did with CKSL? Isn't it though that like no pain, no gain? Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So if we just use our life just chasing after sense pleasures, after delicious food to eat, attractive sounds, always want to hear good music, just wearing comfortable clothes, and then kind of that's all for us. That's all there is in life. It's just having those kind of pleasures. I mean, even in a secular context, that's very shallow. It's considered like very shallow. It's not very meaningful. It's very self-centered, selfish. And it doesn't enable you to do anything significant if you can't endure like hardship. To achieve anything in life, we have to be able to bear some hardship, some pain, a difficulty. So disliking pain then is, if it becomes an obstacle to achieving much of anything. Even I was reading, my brother-in-law is an executive in a big company, big engineering firm, and when he was a few years ago, he was like just kind of entering the upper echelons of the executive ranks there, from being just a kind of ordinary engineer. And his boss had given him this book of like advice for, I don't know, how to be a CEO or something like that. So we were together at a vacation. I was just flipping through the book, and there was some really good advice in the book. I was quite impressed. But one thing it said was like, every year, do something by yourself that's like really difficult that other people wouldn't do. Like going for a hike in the desert, or I don't know, like, rowing a boat across, I don't know, Lake Superior or something like that. Do some kind of thing, by yourself, alone, that requires like, requires you to endure some hardship and bear up to it, like on your own. It's good advice. In Dharma practice, there's the laziness of not bearing hardship when practicing Dharma. So Dharma practice, it entails some hardship. Just facing, for example, say we have a problem with anger, just facing that fact is not easy. Facing the fact of our own faults, of our own shortcomings, and then doing something about them, thinking about things we've done to hurt people in the past that we're not really deep inside, we're not comfortable with, and facing up to that, generating regret, and then doing something to purify it or apologizing. Those are not easy things to do, right? Or thinking about death is not itself. It's not an easy thing to do. So so all those things require accepting suffering, right, in different contexts. So if we're obsessed with only having pleasure and dislike and avoiding pain at all costs, then we can't do that. Okay, and then so a couple more quotes here. So this is the main scriptural source for the 8 worldly concerns, is a letter to a friend by Nagarjuna. So in text, it says, acquiring things, not acquiring things. Comfort, discomfort. Interesting sounds, uninteresting sounds. So that means kind of fame and disrepute. And then praise, criticism. These 8 worldly dharmas are not objects of my mind. They're all the same to me. Right. So I'll send this out in the outline, updated outline, or I might have already, but you can come back to it and use this. You can use all these quotes as like objects for meditation. Just print out the little sheet or have your screen in front of you and then read a quote like this. This is basically, he's just listing these 8 worldly concerns in a different way here, but this is the scriptural source. And then think about them. Then Geshe Potawa asked Drum Tempa. So Drum Tempa is Atisha's main student, his heart disciple in Tibet. Geshe Potawa is a famous Kadamba. Geshe asked him, what is the fine dividing line between Dharma and not Dharma? So this is something we've been talking about a lot. What's the fine dividing line between what is Dharma and what is not Dharma? And Drum replied, it is Dharma if it becomes an antidote to delusions. It is not Dharma if it is not. So that's one I just mentioned earlier today. Something is Dharma if it becomes an antidote or it acts against the afflictive emotions, the delusions. It is not Dharma if it does not, if it goes along with, supports attachment, anger, selfishness, arrogant pride, and so forth, then it's not Dharma. If all worldly people do not agree with it, it is Dharma. If they do, it is not. That one's I've been thinking about. It's a little difficult, that one. I think here worldly people you have to interpret as like totally, self-centered materialistic people. Something like that. You have to narrow it down a little bit to make it anything clear, but anyway, we don't have time for it now. So then, okay, finally, the 6 advantages of thinking about death. So the advantage that it's most beneficial. Here it means actually it makes your life meaningful. What it means by most beneficial. It's very meaningful. So the advantage that it's very meaningful in that it turns your mind towards things that are meaningful, turns your mind towards Dharma. The advantage is that it's most powerful, so it makes your Dharma practice intense, strong, and pure. If you think about death, well, anyway, we'll come to it. And then it's important at the beginning, it's important in the meantime or in the middle, and it's important in the end. So these 3 to go together. So here it means it's kind of referring to like just one meditation session. There's some advice, Kadamba advice, that like in any meditation session, if we don't think about Dharma, if we don't think about the fact of impermanence and death at the beginning, we'll be distracted by worldly affairs like throughout the session. So the whole practice becomes mixed with attachment to the things we want of this life, right? And then if we don't think about impermanence and death in the middle of the session, we'll get distracted to just attachment to things of this life. And if we don't think about impermanence and death at the end, then when we're dedicating, we can see our mind starts to wonder, well, what am I going to do after this? Maybe I'll go for a walk here, or maybe I'll go have a nice meal, or maybe I'll watch a movie. Or so then if we don't think about impermanence and death at the end, then again the mind gets distracted to objects of attachment. So the whole practice becomes, so you could think of the beginning, it's kind of in the beginning, middle, or end of a session. or of a retreat or of any period. The mind gets mixed with attachment to things of this life if we don't think about permanence and death. And then finally, the advantage. So there's the advantage that if we do think about impermanence and death, our aim, our motivation stays pure. Right? And then finally, the advantage of, in conclusion, that you'll die happily and gladly. So at the time of death, you feel you've prepared well, you're ready, you've used your life in a meaningful way, in the way that you wanted to, you have no regrets. Did you want to screen? What did I missing something in the chat? Anyway, and you'll die gladly, confidently. Okay. Then there's a quote or two. Okay, and then questions for discussion. Okay. So then the advantage of being most powerful. So this relates to the second one, the advantage of being most powerful. By seeing aging, the suffering of sickness, and dead bodies from which the mind is gone, the resolute abandon this prison-like home, while ordinary worldlings can never eliminate attachment. So the key is to eliminate attachment. Right? So by seeing aging, the suffering of sickness, and dead bodies, corpses from which the mind is gone, the resolute abandon this prison-like home. So the resolute abandon attachment to this life which has been thrown by karma and afflictive emotions, and they use it well to work towards kind of a life which is not produced by karma and afflictive emotions, which is not based upon selfishness and self-cherishing or selfishness and ignorance. While ordinary worldlings can never eliminate attachment. So think again, kind of very, sort of small-minded, materialistic, people obsessed with just the pleasures of this life in a selfish way. They can never eliminate attachment. Anyway, I have to kind of compare. And then the advantage that you will die happily and gladly. So this is from Jetsun Milarepa, as quoted by Pamuk Rinpoche, Liberation of Palm Your Hand. He says, I fled to the mountains because I feared death. Right. So I don't know if you know anything about the life of Milarepa, but just in a super brief way, he says, he became one of the most famous yogis in Tibet. But in the early part of his life, his mother and sister, his whole family experienced a lot of hardship and deprivation at the hand of a cruel uncle after his father passed away. And so his mother was obsessed with taking revenge. So when he became of age, like 16, 17, she sent him off to study the black magic, black arts with someone. And then he became proficient at that and came back and like cast spells and made, basically made the whole house of his uncle collapse in the midst of a wedding party and killed like 30 some people. Then later he recognized that was an extremely negative thing to do, and recognizing his own death and fearing, taking rebirth in hell, basically from having killed so many people, he fled to the mountain. He sought out a Dharma teacher and then went to the mountains to purify and try to transform his mind, and eliminate that, to eliminate that danger of suffering incredibly as a karmic result of his own actions. So I fled to the mountains because I feared death. I've realized emptiness, so the ultimate nature of reality. I've realized emptiness, the mind's primordial mode of existence. Even if I were to die now, it would be no pity. Right? So he says, I've realized emptiness, the mind's primordial mode of existence. Even if I were to die now, it would be no pity. So hopefully, all of us, we have the opportunity that we can end our lives like that, feeling that, even if I die now, I have no regrets. No, there's nothing I would have done differently. I can die happily and peacefully and with a mind full of joy, caring about others, concerned about others, and not afraid for my own future, because I feel like, I've been the best person I can be. Okay, so any questions? Let's stop there. How do I? Oh, okay. can take some questions for you. Hold on, am I sharing the screen? I'm not. Shoot. Did you want to? I see. You know what I did? I minimized. Why didn't you tell me? Mary Ellen, you should have come on and told me.
Sorry.
Oops, sorry. Because you know what I did? I've been having a difficulty with this. There's this box that shows, in the side that shows, the video, the people on video. So I actually minimized that instead of just reducing it in size. So I've been looking at my whole screen, just thinking you guys are looking at it too the whole time. Sorry.
If you want to scroll through.
Sure, I'll do that.
If you do it slowly enough, I can capture it and then I can send it out.
I don't know. I mean, we're going to send it all out on a Word file anyway.
Okay.
So you should have. I wish next time if I do that, come on and tell me, like, you're not sharing your screen, Venerable.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was intentional.
No, it wasn't. I didn't want you looking at me the whole time. Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, any questions? No?
I have questions, please, about some of the reading that we're doing. So there are two questions I have. One was an article by Lama Yeshe called Dissolution. And I guess my general question would be, is he kind of being creative with language, or is there language in there we need to understand? Like he makes a big deal about dissolution being the opposite of solution, and I was like, I'm not really catching all of that. It's being kind of artistic, like poetic.
Yeah, it's a poem. It's that poem, right?
Yeah, it sort of is, but it's not using some of the conventional language that I've heard, and I'm wondering, is this
right
new realm that, to do with the practice?
Don't worry about that too much. Okay. I mean, yeah, he's using words in a way that, if you have a lot more background knowledge, you can make some sense of. But yeah, he's being creative and a little bit using some wordplay and stuff. I was surprised to see a poem by Lama Yeshe, actually, because, his English was never that good in a way, not like a native speaker. I mean, he can communicate profoundly exactly what he means, but in a very unconventional way. So I wouldn't, don't worry too much about that.
And if I can ask, the other question was about the book we're reading, Advice on Death and Dying by His Holiness. That's very profound. And I think that what I'm getting from that is that I want to develop a practice more than just meditating on things, but like the poem that's just been introduced. Is that something that we want to devote some study for months or what, like that? Because it seems like it would be something that, like, don't overlook this. This is not just a academic topic. So I don't know if I'm asking this as a question, but I'm very moved to action, but I'm not sure what the action is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what, I'm not sure. I mean, you mean like, it's good to do hospice work or something like that. But I'm not sure what you have in mind, like, as opposed to just meditating. Like, you can do meditation, like serious retreat, like Milarepa did. Is that kind of what you have in mind?
There are stages that you're supposed to become familiar with in death that they don't,
that's
things that don't frighten you. What that's the stuff I'm wondering about.
That's coming. Yeah, in the outline I sent out, we're going to do that. The eight absorptions at the time of death. That's what. That book by His Holiness. That's one of the most profound things about it. He goes in detail through those. And that we'll talk about that in the session after next, I believe.
Okay, thank you. My curiosity is on fire here. Thank you.
Great. But there are other things you can, there's many, meditation on death is one of the most important sort of meditations that the Buddha spoke about in the Pali Canon and the Sanskrit Canon. And there's many ways to do that. Like the Buddha recommended going to sit by water bodies, by the ocean or by a river, because it naturally reminds us of impermanence. Think how, we're like a wave on the ocean that just arises, travels, moves through, the water for a while, and then crashes on the beach and is done, is finished. Or sit by a river and remember how it's continually changing. The Buddha literally said it's good to go to places like that, sit by bodies of water that remind us naturally of impermanence. Or just sit in the forest and listen to the sound. I mean, change is all around us. We're all sitting, in these kind of rooms that are built by humans where things don't change very much, right? So we get used to living lives in spaces that are artificial in that way. They don't really show the nature of the world. Whereas if we go out and we're, in the fields and the mountains and the meadows and the forest, the nature of impermanence, which is one of the most profound things, is all around us all the time. I think we kind of forget how cut off we are, like in our modern lives that way, and how unhealthy it is for us, actually. So, and then another thing, especially in the Pali Canon, but especially in the Sanskrit Canon, it's also recommended even more extreme. Go to hospitals, go to graveyards, go to, in the West we can't do so much, but here in India, like go to places where the cremation grounds, burial grounds, look at corpses and remember, like, this is going to be me one day. My body's going to be there, just like that. It's very powerful, in a way that we can't really generate by just imagining. There's nothing like being in a place, seeing something like firsthand, right? It's just different. A couple of years ago, I got to go to the Varanasi. It was one of the best places. There's just massive. There's, they burn bodies on the ghats like day and night. Some of the ghats, Asi Ghat, I think it is. And there's nothing like being there. It's just, no matter how many times you've been there, just to see it, firsthand. Again, it's always like a bit of a shock. It touches you in a way that other things don't. So I imagine hospice work is like that too. It's one thing to think about the fact that everybody dies, but it's a whole different thing to be at the bedside of a dying person, like again and again. It's completely much more powerful. So yeah, there's a lot of practical things we can do to help with this contemplation. Okay, any other questions right now? We can also we'll have some question and answer time later. So the plan is we take a short break, then we do a little meditation, and then we have some discussion group. And then at the end of that, we can have a little bit more question and answer time. Okay, I don't see any other questions now. So let's have a 3-minute break again. I think it was enough last time. And then we'll come back and do a little meditation. So the meditation will be, and I will share the power, will be on the stuff we just went over. Okay, break time. So I just uploaded the outlines for today's session in the chat box. It's a Word document. So if you want to look at different of the quotes that I shared today, they're all in the outline while we're meditating now, or also during the week. So this kind of meditation we're going to do now is quite straightforward. So I'll share my screen for real now. So we'll start with the first. Remember, there were 3 things we went through today: the 6 disadvantages of not thinking about death, the 8 worldly concerns, and the 6 advantages of thinking about death. So that's way too much to think about in 10 minutes. But we'll start at the beginning with the 6 advantages of not thinking about, the 6 disadvantages of not thinking about death. So the way to meditate on, something like this is just to go through them one by one at your own pace. And basically, first of all, think, well, what does that mean? The drawback that you'll not remember the Dharma. And then think, well, is that true or not? Right? And why or why not? Is it true that there's a drawback that you will not remember Dharma? So is it true that if you don't think about death, you won't remember Dharma? Right? That's a drawback. And that not remembering Dharma is a drawback, right? So you have to kind of understand it for yourself. And then, because it's making an assertion, right? There's a drawback. a fault that if you don't think about death, you will not remember Dharma, right? So we need to ask, well, is that true or not? In order to come to some kind of insight or conclusion about it for ourselves in our own way, we also have to ask, well, why? Or why is that true? Or why is it not true? And relate it to your own experiences and reasons. Okay, yeah. Right. And then the same, then just go to the next one, the drawback that you will remember Dharma, but will not practice it, right? And then practice, but not, and so forth. So just go through those one by one. So in the 10 minutes we have, I won't give any additional instruction. I'll just ask you to do that. Go through them one by one at your own pace. You don't have to get through all 6, 10 minutes. Get however far you get, but think about them one by one. And then you can also use, so I shared some quotes related to several of them. Some of the quotes that are there, they're in the outline. But I won't show them while we're meditating on the screen. You can also use those to help. So is that clear? I think this should be clear what to do. Okay, so let's take 10 minutes and meditate like that. Okay, so let's pause there. Was that instruction is okay for you all? Could you all kind of follow that? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so let's do just breakout rooms now, Alan, for, I don't know, we'll leave 5 minutes or so at the end to for question and answer discussion. So I don't know how many we have, about 18 minutes or so, 17 minutes discussion. Let me share, hold on, the discussion questions. I made questions. And maybe can you take a screenshot of this and put it in the chat?
Yes.
Also, they're in the outline for this section. So you probably can't discuss all of them, but you get the gist. And these you can also use for contemplation during the week.
Okay.
But in addition, during the week to meditate, just meditate like we just did on the rest of the points we covered today. Okay. Okay, we have a couple minutes to discuss now, anything we want. Yeah, maybe I can just, because I visited all the rooms, I'm the only one. So I can recount some of the main points. And one of the rooms, one of the main things being discussed was, yeah, how when you see someone die, suddenly it does kind of help cause you to rethink everything you've done before, to be like, well, how would I use my life differently to have, if I could have prevented this death? Or when you see someone die, realizing how you treasure them so much that you would have done things differently, if you'd known that time together was going to come to an end. And then another room talking about, the 8 worldly concerns. Can we really avoid them or not? And another room talking, well, we ended with a question about how can reflecting on death bring more kind of peace and a kind of liberating sense of freedom to us, or not?
Can
Sure.
We ended up talking also about how death always seems to kind of travel ahead. So even when we're thinking, yes, we're going to die, yes, we're going to die, it's always, but not today, not, so when you're 30, 40s old and when you're 40, 50s old. Everything always kind of keeps one step ahead, and how it's important to remember all the time, and that there are lots of ways to die.
Yeah, that's all stuff we're going to talk about next session. Actually, next session is the 9-point death meditation, just the real heart of the whole module. But that's after Christmas. So I wish you all Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays in between, and Happy New Year. We meet again, I think it's January 5th. So we have 3 weeks. So try to don't let go totally of any awareness of death in between. Try to come back to this topic a little bit. It'll make your holiday season richer. For sure. I mean, actually, Christmas is a good, it's a good opportunity to think about death, isn't it? Because, well, actually, when did Jesus die? Christmas is Jesus' birth, no? Celebration of Jesus being born. Easter is Jesus' death, isn't it? And resurrection. I was born raised as Roman Catholic. Now I should know all this stuff. Better, but no. It's all been mixed with Buddhism now. But yeah, but it's true. I mean, holiday season, I think we think about birth and death. It makes it all much more meaningful than just ornaments and gifts. Okay, well, maybe there's nothing, too much to discuss now, so we can wrap it up. So let's dedicate. So think about whatever merit we've created in this session, beginning with our positive motivation at the beginning. All we've done. We can rejoice in our merit and the merit of all the others in the group. And then think of all sentient beings and all the virtuous things they do. We can rejoice. And then all the profound virtues and merits created by spiritual masters through all time, from Shakyamuni Buddha down to the present, and then other religious traditions, other fields as well. We can rejoice in all of that. So all these oceans of merit gathered together, dedicate. May all sentient beings gain deep insight into the nature of impermanence and death, and may that make their lives richer and more meaningful. And may all sentient beings treat one another with kindness, and may the intention to harm another person totally be eliminated from the world, along with abuse, violence, warfare, lying and cheating, stealing, all those things that destroy people's sense of safety and people's trust. And especially may this crisis of climate change and global destruction be completely reversed. May the world become a pure land for practicing Dharma in any form it takes. In short, may all sentient beings be free from every form of suffering and of every form of well-being and happiness. May all of our actions contribute to that. And may the Buddha Dharma flourish, and all true Dharma teachings flourish. Okay, thank you all very much. Yeah, like I said, try to practice some meditation during the week and the intervening time till we come back. And all the quotes again, all the quotes and all the points I went through are in that outline uploaded here, and we'll send out an email with the updated kind of outline. So yeah, take care and happy holidays.